You're listening to the ESO Network, your station for all things geek.
Let's get spooky. This is our station, Boo, where we explore the dark and mysterious corners of the world of horror, and we know that you are dying to listen.
And welcome to the Spooky Kooky podcast of Earth Station Boo, where we talk all things horror, introducing our haunted host with the most. We have our lovely Lisa.
Hey, groovy ghoulies.
We have our kick-ass Karen.
What's up, my horrorholics?
And I am your spooky Shannon. And we are going to be talking about two really fun movies. The original Grudge versus the 2004 remake of The Grudge. So let's get spooky.
Hey, horrorholics. It's time for the Ghastly Report. Stay tuned for all the fun, spine-tingling news happening in horror today, from new releases to spooky events and so much more.
It is the Ghastly Report. So, our lovely little ghouls. There's some fun stuff happening in the world of horror right now. So we're going to kind of tell you all about it. Lisa, what do you got on deck?
On deck, I have Eli Roth has a new venture, the horror section of fan-powered entertainment company that lets diehard fans and lovers of horror invest in horror film. It's horror itself. I actually joined it myself a couple weeks ago, so that's cool. And then Blumhouse's new 8-episode series, The Bondsman, drops in April 3rd, stars Kevin Bacon as a resurrected bounty hunter of Halloran, gets an unexpected second chance at life, love, and his nearly forgotten musical career, only to find out that his old job now has a demonic new twist.
Interesting.
Yeah, it sounds good.
Karen, what do you have going on?
Neon's latest is Hell of a Summer, to be released theatrically on April 4th. 24-year-old camp counselor Jason Hochberg, who arrives at Camp Pineway thinking his biggest problem is that he feels out of touch with his teenage coworkers. But what he doesn't know is that a mass killer is lurking on the campgrounds, brutally picking counselors off one by one. Okay, number one, he is not that far from a teenager himself. If there was somebody in the 30s, I'd be like, okay. He is out of touch with the teenagers. But the fact that he probably has TikTok and all that, he'd probably be in touch with the teenagers. That's just what I'm saying. Okay? Okay. So next on deck, we have A24's Crystal Lake, the series that's on Peacock, the Friday the 13th prequel series. It has found its Pamela Voorhees.
Ooh.
And the actress's name is Linda Cardellini.
Mm-hmm. You may know her as Velma from the live-action Scooby-Doo.
Oh.
Ooh.
Mm-hmm. Yes, our sassy little Velma.
Or Velma.
Is going to be playing Jason's mommy.
Young Jason mommy, too.
Alrighty. Dreamboat is scheduled to arrive in select theaters April 2nd. A take on Disney's Steamboat Willie, which is now public domain. So be ready for some of these Disney properties to start becoming public domain and instantly becoming horror films like Winnie the Pooh and all that kind of fun stuff. But Screamboat, it's coming out. The gist of it is be our guest on the New York City ferry ride that turns into a hilarious nightmare when a mischievous mouse named Steamboat Willie becomes a monstrous reality. As passengers set sail, their trip turns deadly when the tiny terror unleashes murder and mayhem. Sounds interesting. I've seen a few different clips and trailers. It looks grungy spooky. For all of our cryptic lovers out there, Well Go USA Entertainment has released a trailer for a new film called Cryptic that drops on digital on May 9th. The official plot is described as sometimes when you go hunting for monsters, the monsters find you first. In Courtney Roy's debut feature Cryptic, a woman's search for a missing cryptologist leads to her own riveting cosmic quest for identity, a horror unlike any other. This actually has come up a few different times for me in my horror news things. So I'm kind of excited to see what becomes of that one.
Sounds pretty good.
Right? Our lovely little ghouls. What are you looking forward to? Have you hopped in on Eli Roth's new fan-powered entertainment company? Are any of these movies or shows something that's on your to-watch list? Tell us in our comments. So let's get on to the show. Come on, let's get spooky.
Hey Horrorholics, it's Shannon. Earth Station Boo has just launched its brand new merch store. It's time to get your hands on some killer gear. From our fun logo shirts, cozy hoodies, Let's Get Spooky stickers, and Horrorholics Anonymous totes, there's something for every one of our lovely little ghouls. We offer our spooky designs on many different types of products to fit your desires. But if you happen to see a missed opportunity, just let us know. And unlike most of Stephen King's adaptations, you know what I'm talking about, you won't be disappointed with the quality of the products. Head over to our link tree in our bio, grab your merch, show off your favorite horror podcast, and most of all, let's get spooky.
I'm Tony Heath.
And we host the Watch-A-Thon of Rassilon,
a podcast where we're watching through all of classic Doctor Who.
Nope, we've already done that.
We did? Well, then now what do we do?
What do we two do? We review New Who.
Ooh, we too review New Who?
We do, just for you.
Who?
Not you, them, the listeners of the podcast.
Ah.
The Watch-A-Thon of Rassilon.
Now we review New Who too.
Woohoo!
So we're doing another of our movie versus movie. We're going to do the original versus a remake. And The Grudge has had a couple of remakes and spin-offs and sequels and prequels and all sorts of fun stuff. But we're just going to be specifically doing the 2002 version and the 2004 version. So let's just go ahead and get started with our initial thoughts. Let's start with the original. What did we love about it? What stood out? What's our initial thoughts just on that one? And not in comparison to the other one, just it itself by itself. Karen, you want to start us off?
I first watched the remake because, I didn't know any better. And then I found out there was original. And when I watched the original, I was like, this is beautiful and very creepy and haunting. Oh my God. What happened? Like, why did we make it a remake? And I love the movie just for the shadowing effect, the camera angles, the fact that just simple things makes it creepy. They didn't have to go all out to make it what it is. But I would I watch it like once a year because of the effects that they have. That little boy, man, Toshio, kind of creeped me out. Especially when he opens his mouth and then you hear that cat meow. Man. And the lady, I don't know what the Japanese people have, these long-haired like ghosts, but dang.
It's not okay, I'm gonna say this. It's not just Japanese people. Think about all of the ladies in the white dress stories.
Yeah, but still, it's like almost every single Asian horror story I see, it's like just a lady with a long hair covering her face, but you see one eye. But the effects are really good, even though you've seen that type of ghost so many times. It still creeps you out by watching the original Grudge.
Yeah. Lisa, how about you?
I was fortunate to watch the original Grudge first, and because I've always collected Japanese horror and Asian horror, I thought the cinematography was beautiful. The atmosphere was so creepy. Even when they were doing the normal stuff, it was creepy. Yes, I agree with Karen about the little kid. He is creepy, especially when he opened his mouth and you heard the meow. I think he was little kid ghost like creeped me out anyway. So the lady, she was really creepy. The noise freaks me out still, but I can make the noise. So it's kind of fun to mess with people who've seen the movie. Yeah, I think it was beautifully done. The effects were great for low budget. I mean, they used practical and all the other stuff that they did. It's very atmospheric and haunting and beautiful at the same time.
Yeah. I think I saw the remake first, but I know that I've seen the original a number of different times. And actually, I think what I love most about it is the simplicity of it. I think the simplicity of it makes it extremely beautiful and even more haunting because there isn't as many special effects. There isn't as much in your face gore and all that. It was very like the unknown was there, and that was what was frightening. That is what set you on edge, was that okay, like you were pointing out about like the long hair covering the face and you can't really see the face. We as humans like to see the face. When we can't see the face, it irks us. So not being able to see her face, I think, just killed it. That little boy is absolutely creepy. There's a couple of streamers that I watch on Twitch, and I love it when somebody comes in and presses that like death rattle sound, because you'll just see them, they'll like throw off their earphones because they're like, no, I'm not listening to that. But I think it's kind of funny, and that it has that kind of effect, and it's just a noise. It's just a little noise that they throw in the movie. But I like also the nod to a lot of traditional folklore in not even just like Japan, but in a lot of Asian cultures about what happens when somebody dies a tragic death. I think that was amazing. I think they did a fantastic job telling that kind of story. Now, again, without comparing, because we're going to do the comparing afterwards, what are our thoughts on the 2004 remake? Lisa, do you want to go first this time?
Sure. It was all right. I think they could have done better with the cinematography. It didn't feel as creepy. And I felt they used too much daylight, to be honest with you. Not as much shadows. Honestly, the little boy still creeps me out. The cat, I felt sorry for the cat. I think they did kind of give a nod to Japanese folklore, which was kind of good. I don't know. It just, the woman ghost seemed, I don't know. She was creepy, but not as creepy. I don't know. It, to me, I think they could have done a lot more cinematography and less light to make it creepier.
Okay, that's fair. Karen, how about you?
So when I first saw the movie, I was like, "Oh, this is an interesting movie. It's pretty good." And you know, the whole language switching kind of threw me off a bit because I'm like, "So you're Americans living in okay. So we're gonna have a bilingual movie. I didn't know it was gonna be bilingual. I thought it was gonna be all like, one language.
Mm. I'm actually not upset about the bilingual part.
Yeah, I was expecting one language.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
When you have that one, thought
Yeah.
process, it kind of throws you for a loop. But I didn't mind it. I enjoyed it for what it was. It's just that it was just too much daytime stuff.
Yeah.
Too much light. I was like, it'd be better if it was like, if you're gonna convey a story, especially a ghost story, there should be more darkness.
Mm-hmm.
Too much people going outside and doing regular, ordinary stuff, which I understand. They leave their lives. You want to show them doing work and then doing investigation, but at the same time, you're like, you need that certain type of shadow and darkness that's
Mm-hmm.
kind of foreboding.
Makes sense. That makes sense. Yeah, like I said, I actually do like the fact that the remake was bilingual. I understand that it was geared towards a Western audience, so I understand why like some of the things that I think they took away when it came to like more of like a Japanese storytelling, they took away. I kind of understand why, but at the same time, I think it was just a different kind of spooky, scary, haunting story. I think it played more psychological than it did haunting, if that makes sense. Overall, I don't think it was a horrible movie, and I think it might be a good gateway to Asian horror if that is like a story or even like a style of horror that you like. Like I think it might be a great like gateway to the genre of Asian horror. But is it like the best movie ever? I don't think so. I don't think yeah, it's not bad. I enjoyed it, but it's not a go-to for me. What I do think is interesting, especially with the fact that we said that, okay, like the cinematography was different and there was too much daylight. These films were directed by the same director. he's the storyteller here. So I granted, yeah, he changed it up a little bit, but still the same storyteller, which actually is kind of unusual for remakes. Usually it's not the same director or even writer. A lot of times it gets a whole new creative team puts it together. How do we think his perspective changed between the two films? And they were only 2 years apart, 2002, 2004 for the releases. And how do we think that time difference affected like the tone of the film and the execution of the film? And one being like a major production company versus a slightly lesser known production company. Karen?
For me, the time, for some odd reason, my mind was like, oh, they're like 10 years apart, and then you do research, you're like, oh no, they're 2 years apart.
Mm-hmm.
What the hell? The first one, it gets into the whole nitty gritty of the cultural aspects and the cultural storying of where what happens when somebody gets murdered, and the sorrow and the anger that's left behind. And it goes into this like whole tale that's beautiful and spiritually significant. While the second story, even though it's by the same person, it was more of investigation
Mm-hmm.
than of a story of a folklore story.
Yeah.
And they both have their own storytelling, and it makes it better, because
Mm-hmm.
even though the American one has like, the Japanese culture and, trying to explain what the curse is, it is like, it's something to introduce the American audience to like, hey, this is what a grudge is. Where those who never experienced Asian culture, a Japanese folklore, if they watch, the first one, they won't understand what's going on. So I actually like how both of them are done. And I like the fact that they were actually done 2 years apart instead of like, 5, 10 years apart,
Mm-hmm.
because you had the same director who knew what he wanted and knew how to tell a story for one audience to another audience.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there was also a remake for, an Indian version. I don't remember how many remakes there were, but
There's so many. So many.
yeah, but so both of them stand alone in their own storytelling. But I believe like the 2002 version is more of the folklore, traditional cultural storytelling, while the second one is more of the investigation, introducing people to a story.
All right, Lisa, your turn.
Okay, I would definitely agree with Karen. I think the reason there was so much difference between the two stories is the director was trying to introduce the people who who never are in. I'm grasping for words now. People who are not familiar with Japanese culture, to introduce them to that. They explain the story, but like she said, it is more of an investigation, where the first one is more of a storytelling of the grudge itself, the Juon itself is more of a mythology type of thing. Whereas, and I think he probably didn't, working with the American company, he probably didn't have as much have freedom as he did with the other company, so he kind of worked it where he could use it, still tell the story and introduce people, but he couldn't. I don't know how to explain it. It's just like he told it where we would under the audience who'd never been into the American audience or whoever who had never been introduced it, so that you could start it as like a gateway, like you were saying. And then the other one, if you're already familiar with it, it's just like he had more freedom to do what he wanted and all that.
Mm-hmm.
But either way, they're both good stories.
Yeah. I actually think the second one was his way of changing the story to see how it would have played out if he had told it different.
That's a good way to put it.
I think he was looking at, okay, I told it this way. How else could I have told this same exact story? Because really, for the most part, it's pretty similar. Like the happenings are all pretty similar, but there is that little bit of a change with the one character and how that character's story ends. But I think he wanted a different ending, and he wanted to see how he could get there to that different ending, starting it from a different spot.
Mm-hmm.
I am with you, Karen, though. I do think when I first saw them, I didn't realize they were 10 or 2 years apart. I thought that they were 10 years apart. But I think part of that is because the first one almost feels old. Like it feels like it's 10 years older. It looks to me like a movie from 1994.
Yeah.
Instead of 2002. I think that's interesting, especially when you look at the budget. He didn't have a measly budget. Like he actually had a decent sized budget for that first film. It was what, 3.5 million? Yeah, 3.5 million. And then the second film, he had 10 million. So it wasn't like it was like a huge jump, especially knowing you had a slew of big names in that second film. Because you had what? Sarah Michelle Gellar, Jason Behr was really big during that time. You had Bill Pullman, Katie Strickland.
Yeah, there was a pretty good
like these were big name people in this film. So like the majority of that budget went to that. It didn't go toward the making of the film because in 2004 you had Buffy going on. Jason was doing, I think, wasn't he doing Roswell?
I believe so.
Or it had just ended or something like that. Bill Pullman was pretty big at that time. So like all these people were like kind of like at a peak, and not, I won't want to say peak, but they were at a point in their career where they could easily say, oh, I want $4 million for this film, and could have gotten it.
Yeah.
So it's one of these deals where I'm like, okay, this is interesting. Like knowing who is in it. Granted, I won't lie. I don't know Asian actors who specifically kind of stay in the Asian market as well as the US market, but I do think it's interesting how the movies look completely different. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting to see where the budget got used. We've kind of talked about it already. The original was definitely rooted in the Japanese culture and folklore. The remake was definitely reimagined for the Western audience. How do we think these cultural differences in setting and tone influence the overall impact of the stories? Lisa, you want to start?
How it impacts the influence of the stories? Well, like I said, the American version kind of gave it more of a gateway to kind of get people more into the Asian horror and all that. Mm-hmm. I think it also had a more modern approach to it, whereas, like you said, the first one felt more like the 90s, the 80s. It just didn't feel like it was not futuristic. It didn't feel like present day, mm-hmm. more aged or something like that. I don't know how else to. And I agree with you. I thought it was 10 years apart until I saw that. I was like, wow. I think they both influenced culture in two different specific ways to get people into storytelling and listening to folk stories, as well as from a modern point of view to get you to know another culture. So they both influenced these things similar but different.
Yeah, Karen, how about you?
Well, with the 2004 remake of it, it was more of a Western feel than an authentic Asian feel to the story, because you have Westerners coming in to live, in a foreign land. And so you have to watch it in that Western gaze just to get, the understanding of what's going on. Mm-hmm. And that's how it changes that story, the meaning of that story, the impact of that story. And even like both of them explore like different characters. This one, the 2004 remake explored more of the Western characters. I mean, they had some few Asian characters that explored, where the Grudge comes after them. But, with the 2002 original, you already understand, if you understand Asian culture, folklore, or anything like that, you already understand that this story is going to be totally different from with the remake. Mm-hmm. So the OG, the effects of it is that you get to understand a little bit more of the story of the Grudge.
Yeah.
You don't have to investigate. You know what happened. Poor lady being murdered, and her son and cat. Oh, poor cat.
Agree.
I hate when there's senseless animal violence.
Yeah. Like both of them had senseless animal violence. It really did.
Yeah.
If you go into both movies thinking that it's going to be the same movie, then you're going to miss the point of what they are. So for me, the cultural aspect was different from each story because you have to look at it at the different gazes. Where one you have to look at it as the Asian gaze, the other one you have to look at it as a Western gaze, and so the story is going to be slightly the same but completely different. And the impact that it has is that you have a lot of people or directors trying to westernize a lot of the stories, the horror stories that come out of the Asian countries, and sometimes it's a hit and sometimes it's a miss. Most of the times, the one I've seen are misses. Because you have to understand your audience and you actually have to understand the story.
Yeah.
If you don't understand the story, it doesn't translate very well to the audience.
No.
Of the Western audience.
Yeah. And the Western audience isn't normally a very open-minded audience either when it comes to understanding cultural differences, when it comes to how stories are told. They're very, very rooted in the, hey, this is how you tell a story. Why aren't you telling it the same way as, how we're used to it? That doesn't make sense. I feel like there's always like almost a hypercriticism when it comes to foreign films versus Western made films. They both had their own individual audiences for sure. And I think they reached the audiences that they were really meant to reach, and the story was told the way that it was supposed to be told. But I do think the impact was massive on how stories were told. Those early 2000s, there's a lot of films that started doing the back and forth timeline switching around. It was kind of like a trope almost. And these movies did that. But the tone on how they did it was different. At the same time, I think the cultural differences for somebody who is open-minded enough to appreciate a different type of storytelling makes both of these films fantastic. Because I think it even, not only just being a gateway for Americans and or Western cultures to understand Asian culture, but I think it even shows Asian cultures what almost a Western lens would look like how the Western side sees the Asian side, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think it allows the transparency both ways, but I think it's interesting what stayed the same as well.
Oh, yeah.
Like the little boy and the cat screaming,
both cute and creepy,
and the noise,
or like the hand on the back of the head while showering.
Yeah,
like certain little things. It doesn't matter what culture you're in. It's creepy as fuck, and you don't want to deal with it.
Yeah, I don't want to deal with it. Anything creepy,
right? But actually, let's talk about the curse, the grudge. Which, Karen, would you actually like to describe what the grudge is for our lovely little ghouls?
Okay, so the grudge is an instance where a person who is murdered, killed, unalived, that when there's like anger, sadness, sorrow, any type of strong filled emotions that happen around it, it delivers a curse. And no one can escape from that curse, no matter how hard you try. And it kind of envelops neighborhoods in a way because it seeps through everything.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what the curse is.
Yeah, and a lot of cultures actually do believe this, but where you die, energy happens and can stay in that spot. Specifically, even like if you are murdered and it's a tragic killing kind of thing, it leaves almost like a scar in that space.
And this is a type of ghost that's known as the vengeful spirit or the wrathful spirits. So they can't rest.
Yeah,
I don't even think there's a way to help them move on like you would do with any other ghost. I think they're just so vengeful that they don't see like a light or a way to move on.
I mean, you could always do the salt and burn method that the Winchesters are ever so good at.
Yeah, but I don't think that ever happens. I don't think that will happen. I don't think that work.
So the curse in both films operates similarly. Like it's almost exactly the same. I think there's a little bit of a difference in the second film. But do you think one version explores the origins and the effects more effectively than the other? And what did we love about the curse, the grudge, as it's called.
Well, for me, the remake tries to explore like how the curse began. In the OG, you already know how the curse, happened. You just see the aftermath of it, of people being drawn into, what's going on, unfortunately. Because you have like several people who like, oh no, we haven't seen this kid in a while. Let's go see if we could go find him. And unexpectedly, he gets pulled into the curse, and the father goes on a killing rampage, killing the teacher's, like, I think his wife.
Yeah.
And then everybody else gets pulls in, and yeah, even this, the remake, people get pulled in, but you try to figure out, why it happened. It's more like, why did it happen? Who caused this?
Mm.
The second one is like, oh, we know how it happened. Now we're seeing the aftermath of it, because I believe at the end shot, it's like the whole neighborhood is almost empty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree, Karen, how everybody knows that the curse is happening in the original and everything. It shows some flashes of what happened and everything, but it doesn't explain why he went all crazy and everything. Whereas in the second one, it does explain, like, she was supposedly having an affair.
Mm-hmm.
What she wasn't. She just had a crush.
She just had a crush, but she wasn't having an affair. But,
You can't tell a man anything.
Anyway, so I do like the way that the kid was in the first one, the first curse a lot more.
Okay.
And how the woman was portrayed in the original version compared to the woman was portrayed in the remake. I like how the curse kind of followed people around, that once it attached to you, you were just forget it. You were screwed.
I mean,
Didn't one of them try to like break it by burning down a house or something?
They both did.
they both did, and it didn't work. See, you just can't.
The original, it was by the old detective.
Yeah.
And then in the remake, it was by
Karen.
Sarah Michelle Gellar. Yeah, Karen. Sarah Michelle Gellar's character.
See, they tried. They tried to burn it down, and it was like, fuck you.
But they didn't do the salt.
It's like, you could burn us all you want. I don't think the salt will work anyways. This is Japanese ghosts. These are Asian ghosts. Asian ghosts be like, your salt? Because you need like special like herbs and stuff. Because I know like in one ghost, you have to use like the tail of a stingray to stab its body before setting it on fire. No salt involved. But anyways, yeah. That's my rant.
I think the curse was actually done pretty well in both. There was just enough of a difference that I think they were actually equally effective. It was just different. I like how both kind of explored like the origin of it and showed the impact being not just like the people who specifically walked into the house, but like people who were attached to those people. Like the spirits understood the family connection and was like, okay, I'm still like haunting the crap out of you. And constantly like almost like body hopping when it comes to the possession. I think overall, I probably like the original because it felt more folklore. And that I think is just a personal preference.
More folklore.
Yeah. I like folklore because I like the fact that there's like an original story you can almost like see where the movie got inspired by. But the second one I think was kind of cool because it still hit that like this is a folklore tale, but it made it feel more. I think you said it right, Karen, where it's like this feels more like an investigation than it does, a haunting. And kind of like what I said earlier, also, like this feels like more like a psychological horror than it does a haunting horror.
Exactly.
Because it felt like it was more like mind games than it was actually being like haunted. Was there anything, Karen, that you wanted to talk about? Because I know this was like an episode that was kind of your idea, baby. I think you even came up with this like a year ago when we were planning episodes.
Well, the thing is, I like to compare originals versus remakes, especially when it comes to Asian horror, because I like to see what people think.
Mm-hmm.
Because some people, prefer the remakes and others prefer the original. And some people are just like, I like both of them the way they are.
Mm-hmm.
But, for me, I enjoy the original because of the fact that it's very simple.
Mm-hmm.
They tell the folklore. They tell their story. It doesn't get muddled in
Mm-hmm.
Western gaze because you have to tell the story in a way where the Westerners can understand it and can accept it.
Mm-hmm.
Why in the original, people already understand what's going on. People already, accept what's going on. And also their use of camera angles
Mm-hmm.
sets it apart from the remake because you could tell that, especially with Yuan or the Grudge or Yuan the Curse, the camera angles make the movie
Mm-hmm.
because it makes it creepier. It makes it
Mm-hmm.
more haunting. The lighting, they didn't use a lot of blood. They didn't use a lot of prosthetics,
Mm-hmm.
unlike in the remake, where you did see the girl's unfortunate jaw
Mm-hmm.
in the attic, especially the bodies of the man and woman. I have to say, poor grandma in
Mm-hmm.
both movies. Poor grandma. I like to do the comparisons of Asian movies because I'm a big, huge Asian horror fan versus the remake. Even my mom, she'll watch the original, then she'll watch the remake, and she'll be like, because she doesn't. She'll watch the Thai, like she'll watch Thai versions of a movie and then watch the remake, and she's like, and then I have to read like any other language. Like she doesn't understand Japanese, Chinese, so I have to read it for her. Even then, when I'm reading the language for her, she's still like, I don't like remake. So it's if my mom could like see something in a movie in a remake and she said I don't like remake, then that tells me that there's something with the quality of filming
Mm-hmm.
that gets to her as it gets to me.
Yeah. Lisa, what about you? Anything else that you wanted to talk about before we?
I do enjoy the folklore much better than the Western eye. But then again, I've been around the Japanese culture since I was like smaller. And so I kind of understand it more. And I like folklore anyway. I like a good story. And the camera angle and just the minimal effects and stuff that they used just made it more haunting and creepy. You felt like you were part of that folklore. You were like looking around for her to come behind you or the kid in the reflection of a mirror or in a window, and you're like, no, thank you.
that whole move, like the original, makes me like, I want to know about y'all. While in the remake, I'm like, oh, I'm just here for the ride because you're taking me on a ride. You're not.
Yeah, he wasn't as much in the remake, which kind of stunk.
So here's a question for y'all. We've already kind of talked about like what we think the 2004 version, so the remake, what it lacked. So what is something that we think it knocked out of the park in comparison to the original? And then what do we think the original actually lacked in and could have done better?
I have to say that, the remake, the storytelling was really good to bring the audience into the world of Asian horror.
Okay.
That's that was really good. That's the reason why I watched it in the first place. I didn't know it was, it was a remake. I just knew it was a young lady going to Japan with her boyfriend, and then the shenanigans happen. Not really shenanigans, it's more like death. Hauntings and death. But I actually enjoyed the story telling aspect of it, the engagement of the audience, the little slight jump scares that you get. As for the original, it's hard to take apart something that I believe is really good. I would love to have a little bit more haunting because I like the appearance of ghosts and a little bit of jump scares. That's just me. But Asian horror has its own haunting and scary shit.
That's fair. That's fair. Lisa, how about you?
Yeah, as far as the remake, I mean, it was a good gateway to get people familiar with some of the culture and the folklore. I did not like the lighting as much.
Okay.
I think I think it made it more of an investigation than a haunting. I think there was too much light, to be honest, and not enough of the kid. I also, why do you think I drew him the other day and posted it up?
He's so cute and creepy all at the same time.
Exactly. I have a problem with the, animal thing where they showed, the cat on both of the things. But other than that, that was the thing I had problems with the remake. As far as, it's really hard to take apart the Juon, the original. They did such a good job. I would have liked a little bit more ghosty action, but really it was very hard for me to just, I don't know. It just,
I think it's the tension of the movie of the original one that makes up for the ghosty action, because you're always on edge, like what's going to happen next.
Yeah.
exactly.
Can I nope out? No, I can't nope out. Dang it, I went too far in.
Exactly. You can't stop watching it. You're just like,
I'm going to say this. I actually think the original was a little bit lacking when it came to special effects. I think like the makeup to like to ashen people out and everything wasn't done as good as it could have, especially with it having a way higher budget than what I thought. I thought that this was a way lower budget film than what it was. Like the one shot of the kid on the other side of the bed when the guy discovers his wife, you can see the patch marks where the blue had kind of rubbed off a little bit. And so I'm not saying that it like distracts from the film at all. Like I still think the original is a fantastic film. If there could be something they could have done better, it would have been that. And I think some of the shots were worked in a way because the special effects weren't as good as they could have been.
I don't know. Toshio's, skin effect, for me, it kind of like, in that bedroom scene you were talking about, it reminded me of a dead body, like the patchiness that happens, the discoloration.
It it didn't remind me of patchiness of discoloration. It looked like makeup that had been worn off.
Oh.
To me, at least. Because like the patchiness, usually like once somebody dies, within like a certain time frame, it loses all redness. But a ghost that far along wouldn't have had all the patchiness like that, if that makes sense.
yes. I know. Now that you said that, I'm thinking and I'm like, oh, yeah, I did see. Kid probably did that too. So,
Oh yeah, it like just simply like, taking off a shirt or a robe or something like that between takes. Like there was one spot like on his hip where I was like, why is that spot on your hip pink while like the whole rest of your torso is like this weirdish blue gray color? I don't know. It didn't detract from the movie for me, but knowing that like, and this is, mind you, based off of me watching it literally hours ago, just so I could like have a fresh take on the film. It was something I was specifically looking for. I was watching the movie with a critical eye of, okay, like, is there anything about the film that I'm like, they could have done a little bit better on that. That was literally the only thing, was like the bluish makeup for a corpse that's been dead for how many years shouldn't be patchy. And so I will say the remake, I think, was a little bit better in regards to the special effects. I think they were just done a little bit cleaner in comparison.
I can make one comment about the special effects in the remake. The wife ghost, except for one scene, she looks a little Muppety to me when she's floating. And that was my only thing. I'm like, other than that, fantastic special effects. But when she did that thing, I was like, what?
I mean, overall, they're not bad. Like, even in the original, like, even though, yeah, I think it might be a little subpar compared to the remake, it's still really good, especially compared to some movies that have had a even bigger budget than what they had. But
exactly.
But yeah, that's kind of about it. Which version do you guys think is going to have a greater lasting impact on the horror genre, and why?
Are you talking about in terms of culturally or just in
Overall.
general?
Overall.
Well,
It could be all of the above.
oh, okay.
Yeah, I think just greater impact, because impact is different based off of the person and
Mhm.
who's watching it and everything. But I think, and you can even say, like, I think the original is going to have a better impact in this way, and the remake could have a better impact this way.
I mean, both of them are cult classics in their own way. While you have
Mhm.
like, Ju-on the Grudge is like the original OG of the series. I mean, it does introduce you to, what Asian horror can be like.
Mhm.
While with The Grudge, it basically gives Westerners a peek into like the mini stories of Asian ghosts.
Yeah.
Like the other day, I was messing around and I discovered a ghost, a Thai ghost, and I was like, "Why is that a ghost? It's called a tall man ghost. Why is that a ghost?" But it basically opens the doorway to like, oh, if you have a grudge, what other ghosts are there? So it's like one of the first movies that opens up the Westerners' interest into Asian horror.
Mhm.
Especially if they have never
Oh yeah.
seen Asian horror.
Yeah.
So that's the impact for both of them.
Outside of Godzilla, and I'm putting Godzilla in a different category because it is more, because it's like atomic age kind of stuff. I just feel like it's slightly outside. I want to say the Grudge was the first Asian film or Asian like horror type thing that I came into going, oh yeah, this has Asian folklore in it, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Lisa, how about you?
Okay. As far as, they're definitely both cult classics for sure. As far as like one that'll be, remembered, I think the original Juon will be a Criterion classic the way it goes. And if you're into that kind of stuff, which like some cinephiles are, you'll go look for that. But the other one is also going to be a cult classic because of the cast as well as,
Mm-hmm.
production. So it's like you'll at a slumber party or something and go, hey, check this out, and maybe it'll waken up. So I
Mm-hmm.
think one's going to be like a cult classic and the other one, and the original is going to be like more of a Criterion. So
Mm.
I think they're both kind of balanced in the way they'll be affecting people.
Yeah. I don't think either one is going to be more influential on the horror genre than the other. I think they're just going to impact it completely different. Kind of based off of what you were saying, like just looking at what they grossed worldwide, the original only made 3.7 million, while the remake made 187.2 million. Like that's 180 more
Yeah.
than, that's a huge difference. I think they both, like I said, are affecting it completely different. I think, like we've said already, the remake is a gateway. It kind of opens the door saying, hey, now you kind of get an idea. Come check it all out. There's a reason why there's so many Ju-on, films from sequels and prequels. And I think there's even a TV series and like
On Netflix.
yeah. So there's so much material that all stemmed from this one little movie and how it got catapulted. But I think the original, because of its faithfulness to Japanese folklore, has its own marker. It truly does have a massive impact. And I think films like that are the reason why we always get a resurgence of folk horror.
Mm-hmm.
Because people are like, but remember this one film? It was so good. Why? Because it was based off of a real horror story that people grew up with.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like I'm bringing it back to, what was it? Our second episode when we talked about what is horror. It all starts from stories we told around the campfire and how we perceive the world. And so, it's a prime example, a beautiful example of how we perceive the world and the folklore and telling a good horror story.
Mm-hmm.
So with all that being said, we're going to do our final thoughts, and let's go ahead and do skull ratings, and we'll rate both of them. Lisa, why don't you go ahead and start us off?
Okay. For the original, I will give it a 4.0 skulls. I liked it. I loved it. It's definitely in the genre of my favorite folklore and Japanese culture. And for the remake, I will give it a 3.5.
Okay.
I mean, it was good. It was a great gateway, but I feel it was too westernized for my taste. But that's just my opinion.
That's fair. Absolutely fair. Karen, how about you?
I give OG a 4.5 because of the hauntingness of it, the creepiness of it, and because it's Asian folklore, man. Those are creepy. The remake, which I saw first, I give that a 4, a solid 4.
Yeah.
Like I didn't much care for the westernized story, but I understood why they did it because they wanted it opened up to a bigger audience. But I enjoyed it. I still enjoy it.
Yeah.
Of course, I did not enjoy the series on Netflix. It was just that's for another time though.
Yeah, that's a whole other episode on its own. I'm gonna give both of them a 4. I truly enjoy watching both of them, but for completely different reasons. And I'm not gonna lie, I have to be in completely different moods to watch both. Like they're just different enough that I'm like, I can't just be like, oh, I just want to watch all the Grudge movies because they're not cohesive enough for that. But I could see myself going, okay, I'm gonna go watch the OG Grudge today. I want some folk horror in my life. I want something a little bit more psychological, something that's a little more investigative. Okay, I'm gonna go watch this one. But I really do hope that people can watch both and enjoy them for what they are.
Yeah.
And understand like they're not supposed to be the same. I mean, they were directed by the same guy. If he wanted them to be the same, they would have been the same.
Even like the sequels are different.
Yeah. Yeah, very much so. So, our lovely little ghouls. Which one is your favorite and which one did you see first? Come, talk to us. Tell us on our social media. We would love to hear from you. We are on all the different things. We are on Instagram. We are on TikTok. We are on X. We are on Threads. We are on Facebook. We have an amazing Facebook group. You should come join us. I don't know why you're not there already. You can also subscribe and rate us wherever you listen to podcasts, such as Apple, Spotify, and Google. We are also on YouTube. So get your butt there. Drop on some comments on the episode. We would love to chit-chat. But ladies, where can they find you? Lisa?
You can find me on Instagram, Threads, Facebook, and soon YouTube.
Rock on, rock on. Karen, how about you?
You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, Twitter, X, formerly known as Twitter, TikTok, and Reddit.
Rock on. And I am Shannon. You can find me on all the things at Spilled Tea Wine, Media Mind. But before we go, like always, our lovely little ghouls, thank you so much. We cannot thank you enough for all your support. We appreciate every listen, every rating, every comment. It really does mean the world to us. So thank you so much, and stay spooky, horrorholics.
And this has been the Spooky and Cookie podcast of Earth Station Boo.
This has been a broadcast of the ESO Network. Be part of the crew and help support our shows by donating to our ESO Patreon or by shopping at the TeePublic store, which can all be found at www.esonetwork.com. The ESO Network, your station for all things geek.